I asked for 3 days to bury my dad. My boss, also my sister-in-law, coldly said, "Choose work or family." So I walked away and took the one thing they never valued, $39 million. They only realized it when everything started to fall apart. The phone trembled in my hands as I stared at the death certificate on my desk. My corner office on the 40th floor overlooked the city, but all I could see was the hospital room where I'd held my father's hand just hours earlier. 15 years as COO of Martinez Holdings, the empire my husband's family built from nothing. 15 years of proving myself worthy of the Martinez name. My marriage to David Martinez, the eldest son, seemed picture perfect to everyone on the outside. The diamond ring on my finger caught the office light, a gift from the family when I was pregnant with our first child. "Welcome to the family," they'd said. But today, that ring felt heavier than ever. I touched the framed photo on my desk. Me, David, and our 2 kids at last year's company retreat. Everyone smiling, everyone playing their part. But that day, the phone call that changed everything shattered the illusion forever. Do you believe family should always come first? I used to. I used to believe that when you marry someone, their family becomes your family. That blood runs thicker than water. That love conquers all the corporate politics and power games. I was so naive. The call had come at 6 a.m. "Rebecca, this is Dr. Williams from Mercy General. I'm sorry to inform you that your father passed away early this morning. The heart attack was sudden. There was nothing we could do." I dropped the phone, my coffee mug shattering against the marble floor of our kitchen. David was in Tokyo for a merger deal, but I called him immediately. "Babe, I'm so sorry," his voice crackled through the international connection. "Take all the time you need. Family first, always." His words should have comforted me, but something in his tone felt rehearsed, distant. Maybe it was just the bad connection. But when I called Elena Martinez, my sister-in-law and the company's HR director, her reaction caught me completely off guard. The woman who'd welcomed me into the family with warm hugs 15 years ago suddenly turned ice cold. I know you felt isolated in your own family before. That moment when you realize you're still an outsider, no matter how many years you've invested, no matter how much you've given. That's exactly what I felt when Elena's voice went flat. "Rebecca, we need to talk." "Can you sense something's wrong? Because I could." After 15 years of reading boardroom dynamics, you develop an instinct for danger, and every alarm bell in my head was screaming. The meeting happened in Conference Room A, the same room where I'd presented strategies that saved the company millions. Elena sat across from me, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the mahogany table. No condolences. No, "I'm sorry for your loss." Just business. "The company is in the middle of a critical project," she said, her voice as cold as winter steel. "You're the COO. You can't be absent for 3 days. We have 500 employees depending on us." That's when she said it. The words that would haunt me forever. "Choose, Rebecca, work or family. Don't forget your responsibilities to this company." And that's when I realized, in their eyes, I was never really family at all. But you want me to confront her right now, don't you? Or should I dig deeper first? Because when I read the next email on my phone, everything became crystal clear. I drove home in a daze, my father's death certificate crumpled in my purse. Our mansion in Westchester felt empty. David still in Tokyo, the kids at their grandparents' house. I opened my laptop to check emails, and there it was. Elena had already sent an internal memo about a critical company emergency, without mentioning that I'd requested bereavement leave. She was setting me up, making it look like I was abandoning my responsibilities instead of mourning my father. But here's what Elena didn't know about me. I wasn't just some passive COO who married into the family. I had an MBA from Wharton. I was an investment director at Goldman Sachs before I fell in love and joined the family business. I'd sacrificed my Wall Street career for what I thought was love. Looking at myself in the office mirror that night, I saw who I really was. A brilliant woman who dimmed her own light to make others comfortable. A woman who'd built their empire while they took the credit. And that's when I remembered. The most important company accounts were under my control. As COO, I had access to everything. Every account, every investment, every financial decision flowed through my desk. And there, sitting in our special investment portfolio, was $39 million that I'd personally managed and grown over the past 5 years. They told me to choose between family and work, but they forgot something crucial. I wasn't just part of the work. I was the work. And when I realized that, my decision became crystal clear. What do you think I should do next? I called Elena back the next morning, my voice carefully modulated to sound broken and defeated. Elena, I've thought about what you said. You're right. I'll stay and handle the project. The company needs me. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. I knew you'd make the right choice, Rebecca. This is what being part of the Martinez family means. Sacrifice for the greater good. She even had the audacity to ask about my father's funeral arrangements, as if she cared. Do you think I gave up? That I let them win? While I spoke to Elena, I was already logged into our banking system. As the primary signatory on our major accounts, I had access that even Elena didn't know about. My fingers moved across the keyboard with the precision of a surgeon. The broken picture frame on my desk, our family photo from last Christmas, had shattered when I'd slammed my hand down in frustration. But those broken glass pieces reflected something important. The illusion was already destroyed. I was just cleaning up the mess. I know you understand what it feels like to be underestimated, to have your contributions minimized, your intelligence questioned, your worth reduced to your relationship status. But sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest weapon you can have. Let me tell you what they never knew about me. In 2019, when the company faced a $50 million lawsuit that could have bankrupted us, it was me who found the legal loophole that saved us. In 2021, when our debt restructuring nearly failed, it was me who personally negotiated with 12 different banks to keep us afloat. Every major decision, every crisis averted, every success they celebrated. I was the architect. But I did it all in silence. I let David take the credit. I let Elena present my strategies as collaborative efforts. I thought that's what family meant. Lifting each other up, sharing success. They wanted me to choose. Fine. I choose myself. I had sole signatory access to 3 critical accounts: the investment portfolio at $39 million, the emergency fund at $12 million, and the operations reserve at $8 million, nearly $60 million total, all under my direct control. But I wasn't alone in this. Michael Chen, our CFO and my closest friend from Goldman Sachs days, had been secretly documenting every one of my contributions for the past 15 years. Smart man. He knew this day would come. When he video called me that evening, we didn't need words. 2 people who understood finance, who understood power, who understood that sometimes protecting yourself means making moves others won't understand. Rebecca, he said quietly, I've got everything documented. Every deal you closed, every crisis you solved, every million you made them. You're not stealing, you're collecting what's owed. But here's where it got complicated. Was I doing the right thing? Was taking control of funds I'd grown and managed really stealing? Or was it finally claiming ownership of my own work? Sometimes, to protect yourself, you have to become the person they always feared you might be. Monday morning came like a reckoning. I'd spent the weekend executing the most precise financial maneuver of my career. The $39 million was now safely transferred to an offshore account I'd established 2 years earlier, a contingency plan I'd created after noticing Elena's increasingly hostile behavior toward me. You see, this wasn't a spontaneous decision born from grief and anger. This was the culmination of 2 years of careful preparation. Every irregular financial decision Elena made, every attempt to undermine my authority, every snide comment about outsiders in family meetings, I documented it all. I'd quietly established legal protections, created backup plans, and built a network of allies who understood what was really happening behind the Martinez family's perfect facade. The grieving daughter act, the desperate phone call, Elena falling for my defeat, all of it was theater. By the time the banks opened Monday morning, Elena had discovered the missing funds. The frantic phone calls started immediately, but I was already gone. Not just from the office, from their entire world. Elena called David in Tokyo, her voice shrill with panic. "Your wife has stolen from us. $39 million, David. She's destroyed everything." Oh, but here's what she hadn't expected. David's reaction. Instead of blind rage against me, he turned on her. "You pushed her too far, Elena. I told the family to treat Rebecca better, and you ignored me. This is your fault." The perfect Martinez family unity began cracking. David blamed Elena. Elena blamed me. Carlos, the patriarch, blamed David for not controlling his wife. Their internal war had begun. But the real twist? Elena had been planning to remove me from company leadership for months. She'd been positioning her own people, building cases against my decisions, preparing for a corporate coup. She wanted the COO position for herself, and my father's death had given her the perfect opportunity. Text messages recovered from her phone later revealed everything. Rebecca is emotional and unstable. We can't have someone making decisions based on feelings rather than logic. The family business needs stronger leadership. She'd played the long game, but she'd forgotten that I'd been playing it longer. Without my financial expertise and with $39 million frozen, Martinez Holdings couldn't meet payroll. Major clients started pulling contracts. The carefully built empire began showing cracks. Partners who'd worked with us for decades suddenly questioned the company's stability. The woman they'd dismissed as just David's wife had been the keystone holding their entire operation together, and now that keystone was gone. Elena tried damage control, but she didn't understand the intricate web of relationships and agreements I'd built over 15 years. She didn't know which clients needed personal attention, which investors required specific communication, which contracts had hidden clauses that only I knew how to navigate. Within a week, Martinez Holdings was hemorrhaging money and reputation. The business magazines were asking questions. Competitors were circling like sharks. Everything they'd built over 3 generations was suddenly at risk. And I? I was sitting in a coffee shop in Switzerland, watching it all unfold from 4,000 miles away, finally understanding the true price of family loyalty. But here's what none of them knew yet. I wasn't the villain in this story. I was the hero they'd never recognized. Because the $39 million I'd taken, I wasn't stealing it. I was protecting it. From Elena's mismanagement, from the family's increasingly reckless decisions, from a company culture that had become toxic and unsustainable, Michael Chen was already preparing the forensic evidence. The board members who actually understood finance were quietly supporting my actions. The real investigation was just beginning, and when the truth came out about Elena's schemes, about the family's treatment of me, about who had really been holding everything together, they would face a choice. Remove Elena and beg me to return, or face FBI investigation for financial fraud. Isn't it funny how quickly the powerless can become powerful when they finally decide to play the game by their own rules? The call came on a Thursday morning, exactly 2 weeks after I disappeared with their $39 million. David's voice on the phone was different, humbler, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. "Rebecca, please, we need to talk. The whole family. We know we made mistakes." I was sitting in my Geneva hotel suite, watching the Swiss mountains through floor-to-ceiling windows. The forensic accountants Michael had recommended were spread across my dining table, their laptops displaying 15 years of Martinez Holdings financial data, evidence that would change everything. "Mistakes?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "David, what you call mistakes, the FBI might call fraud." The silence on his end told me everything. They'd figured out that I hadn't just taken money and run. I'd taken evidence, documentation, proof of what had really been happening behind their family's golden facade. Here's the ultimate twist, the revelation that would reshape everything. I hadn't stolen the $39 million. I'd been protecting company assets from Elena's systematic embezzlement and financial manipulation that had been bleeding the company dry for 3 years. You want to know what real long-game planning looks like? While Elena was busy positioning herself to remove me from power, I was quietly documenting every irregular transfer, every unexplained expense, every financial decision that didn't align with proper corporate governance. The offshore account wasn't for theft. It was a secure holding account to preserve funds that Elena was slowly siphoning into shell companies she'd created. Michael Chen had been my partner in this investigation from the beginning. Not my accomplice in theft, but my ally in protecting a company we'd both helped build. When he arrived in Geneva with his laptop bag full of evidence, we spread it all across the conference table like pieces of a puzzle that finally revealed the complete picture. Look at this, Michael pointed to a series of transactions from 2022. Elena created 3 different consulting companies, all billing Martinez Holdings for services that were never performed. She's been stealing from the family business while positioning herself as the responsible one. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank transfers to companies that existed only on paper, invoices for consulting services that never happened, financial reports that Elena had personally altered to hide the missing funds. She'd been embezzling slowly, carefully, counting on the family's trust and my silence to cover her tracks. But I hadn't been silent. I'd been building a case. The real secret allies weren't just Michael. Board members who'd watched Elena's power grab with growing concern had been quietly sharing information with me for months. James Morrison, the longest-serving board member who'd known Carlos Martinez since the company's founding, had been documenting Elena's attempts to manipulate financial reports. "Rebecca," he'd told me in a private meeting months before my father's death, "that woman is going to destroy everything your husband's grandfather built. Someone needs to stop her, and the family's too blind to see it." Even some of the other family members had started questioning Elena's decisions. David's younger brother, Miguel, had approached me privately about irregularities he'd noticed in quarterly reports. "The numbers don't add up, Rebecca, but Elena shuts down any questions, says we should trust family." When I walked back into Martinez Holdings 3 weeks after my disappearance, I wasn't returning as the broken woman who'd been forced to choose between work and family. I was returning as the CEO of my own investigation, backed by forensic accountants, federal investigators, and enough evidence to bring down Elena's entire operation. The legal team I'd assembled wasn't just impressive, it was terrifying. Former federal prosecutors, white-collar crime specialists, and forensic accountants who specialized in corporate fraud. They walked into the Martinez Holdings boardroom like an army of justice. Elena's face went white when she saw me, not just because I'd returned, but because of who I'd brought with me. David looked confused, still trying to understand how his wife had gone from victim to prosecutor in the span of 3 weeks. "Ladies and gentlemen," I addressed the emergency board meeting, "I'm here to present evidence of systematic financial fraud that has been occurring within this company for the past 3 years. The $39 million that Elena reported as stolen was actually moved to a secure account to prevent further embezzlement by the actual thief." I placed the first document on the table, then another, then another. Bank records, altered financial reports, documentation of shell companies, evidence of forged signatures. The case against Elena was so comprehensive that even her own lawyer advised her to consider a plea deal. But here's where the story takes another turn. Elena's schemes weren't just about money, they were about power. She'd been systematically undermining my authority for years, not just because she wanted my position, but because she was threatened by my competence. Every crisis I'd solved made her look less capable. Every success I achieved made her feel smaller. The board members listened in stunned silence as I presented evidence of Elena's manipulation. She'd been altering my reports before presenting them to the board, taking credit for my solutions while making my original work look inferior. She'd been intercepting communications between me and key clients, inserting herself as the primary contact while gradually pushing me out of important relationships. The reason Martinez Holdings has been struggling isn't because of market conditions, I explained to the board. It's because someone has been sabotaging our operations from the inside while embezzling our assets. The family trusted the wrong person. Elena tried to defend herself, but the evidence was insurmountable. Financial records don't lie. Bank transfers can't be explained away with family loyalty. When federal investigators joined the meeting via video conference, announcing their official investigation into Elena's activities, she finally understood that her games were over. David stared at his sister like he was seeing her for the first time. "Melina, how could you do this to our family?" But I wasn't finished. The real revelation was still coming. "There's something else the board needs to know," I continued, placing one final document on the table. Elena wasn't working alone. Someone in this family knew what she was doing and chose to protect her instead of protecting the company. The room fell silent. Everyone looked around, wondering who the accomplice was. But I was looking directly at Carlos Martinez, the patriarch, David's father, the man who'd built this empire and watched his daughter-in-law nearly destroy it. Carlos had known about Elena's embezzlement for over a year. Michael's investigation had uncovered emails between them, conversations where Carlos had told Elena to be more careful and not to leave such obvious trails. He hadn't stopped her because he'd been using her theft as a test for me. "You wanted to see if I was truly committed to the family," I said, looking directly at Carlos. "You let Elena steal from your own company, let her undermine me, let her create chaos, all to see how I would respond. You turned my father's death into a loyalty test." Carlos's weathered face showed no emotion, but his silence was confession enough. "Rebecca, you don't understand the pressure of running a family business. Sometimes difficult decisions—" "No," I cut him off. "Sometimes you make choices that reveal who you really are. And what you revealed is that you're willing to sacrifice integrity, honesty, and even your own company's well-being for some twisted concept of family loyalty." David looked between his father and his wife, finally understanding the manipulation he'd been blind to for years. "Dad, you knew? You knew Elena was stealing and you let it happen?" The family patriarch who'd seemed so wise and powerful suddenly looked like what he really was. An old man who'd lost sight of what truly mattered. Carlos had been so obsessed with testing loyalties and maintaining control that he'd forgotten the basic principles that built his empire: honesty, hard work, and treating people with respect. But here's where I surprised everyone, including myself. Instead of pursuing criminal charges against Carlos, instead of destroying the family that had given me 15 years of both love and pain, I made a different choice. I offered them a way out that would save the company and protect the employees who depended on Martinez Holdings for their livelihoods. "Elena will resign immediately and make full restitution for the embezzled funds," I announced. "Carlos will step down as chairman, but remain as an advisory board member. David will assume full leadership of the company, and I will establish my own investment firm, purchasing a 40% stake in Martinez Holdings as an external partner rather than an employee." The room erupted in surprised murmurs. This wasn't the revenge they'd expected. This wasn't the destruction they'd feared. This was something none of them had anticipated: transformation. "The $39 million will become the founding capital for Martinez Chen Investment Group," I continued, nodding to Michael. "We'll be Martinez Holdings' primary investment partner, providing the financial expertise and oversight that's been lacking. The family retains control, but with proper checks and balances." Elena was forced to resign in disgrace, facing federal investigation and potential criminal charges. But the family business survived. The employees kept their jobs. The company's reputation was damaged but salvageable. And I I got something I'd never had before: genuine respect and true partnership instead of conditional acceptance. David stepped into leadership with a new understanding of what partnership really meant. Our marriage began to heal, built now on honesty instead of illusion. The children, who'd been caught in the chaos, started to see their parents as people who could make mistakes but also make things right. But success came with its own complications. Running my own firm while maintaining a partnership with Martinez Holdings meant I was busier than ever. The respect I'd fought for came with responsibilities I hadn't fully anticipated. Power, real power, was more isolating than I'd expected. Some family members never forgave me for exposing Elena and Carlos. Holiday dinners became strained affairs where conversations felt rehearsed and carefully monitored. The warm family gatherings I'd once cherished were replaced by polite but distant interactions. I'd gained justice but lost the sense of belonging I'd originally wanted. The children struggled with the changes too. They'd grown up thinking their family was perfect, and discovering that adults they trusted had been lying and stealing shattered some of their innocence. They had to learn new definitions of loyalty to truth rather than blind loyalty to blood relations. But here's what I learned about power. It's not about revenge or domination. True power is about creating change that benefits everyone, even when it costs you personally. The Martinez family was healthier without Elena's manipulation, even though admitting that hurt. The company was stronger with proper oversight, even though that meant less autonomy for family members. My marriage was more honest, even though honesty sometimes made us both uncomfortable. The hardest realization was that the system I'd been fighting against wasn't just Elena or Carlos. It was a family business culture that had never truly valued outsiders. I hadn't just been fighting individuals. I'd been fighting generations of tradition that said blood mattered more than merit, that family loyalty trumped ethical behavior, that keeping peace was more important than seeking truth. As Martinez Chen Investment Group grew successful, as our client base expanded beyond the Martinez family business, I realized that my real victory wasn't financial or professional. It was personal. I'd finally stopped trying to earn acceptance from people who were determined not to give it, and started building something where my value was never questioned. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 15 years trying to become part of their family, only to discover that my real family were the people who valued my contributions, supported my growth, and treated me as an equal. Michael, some of the board members, key employees who'd watched me work for years. These were the people who'd been my true allies all along. But change isn't just about the destination, it's about the journey. And my journey led me to a place I'd never expected: complete independence with chosen partnerships instead of required loyalty. The office building where I now worked was smaller than Martinez Holdings' corporate headquarters, but it was mine. Every decision, every strategy, every success belonged to me and my chosen partners. When clients came to us, they came because of our expertise, not because of family connections or political maneuvering. Most importantly, I'd finally answered Elena's ultimatum in a way she never could have anticipated. She demanded that I choose between work and family. I'd chosen something she couldn't understand. I'd chosen myself. The business grew beyond anything I'd imagined. Within 2 years, Martinez Chen Investment Group was managing over $200 million in assets. We'd become Martinez Holdings' most valuable partner, but we'd also expanded to serve clients across multiple industries. The expertise I'd developed during 15 years of managing other people's money was finally being used to build something of my own. The respect I received now felt different, earned rather than granted, permanent rather than conditional. When I spoke at industry conferences, people listened because of my track record, not because of my married name. When I made strategic recommendations, they were implemented because they were sound, not because someone was trying to manage family dynamics. But the most profound change was in how I saw myself. I was no longer Rebecca Martinez. the woman trying to prove she belonged. I was Rebecca Martinez Chen, the woman who'd built her own belonging. The difference was everything. My father, who died the day this all began, would have been proud. He'd raised me to be independent, strong, and principled. Somehow, in the midst of grief and betrayal, I'd found my way back to the person he'd taught me to be. They wanted me to choose between work and family, but the real choice had been between accepting their definition of my worth and creating my own. I chose myself, my values, my vision for what business relationships should look like. And you know what? That was the right choice all along. Because sometimes, to save what's most important, you have to be willing to lose everything else. Do you agree?